Hey everyone, we have on the Good News Podcast today, we have a guest coming back for a second time. And we've actually never done this before, but we had rave reviews around Danny Wright. If you want to check out Danny's stuff, go to his website, Living in Inspiration. And this is a guy who definitely lives inspired. The Spirit of God is in him in such a beautiful way. And he spends much of his day, much of his life, really letting that inspiration be a blessing to others. We'll talk a bit about that today, what it is to be inspired, how Danny really works at trying to do his very best to inspire others. This is a great conversation. I think you'll really enjoy this. I gotta tell you, we had just moments before recording. We had an episode here in the studio, and this is sort of giving you the inside scoop here, but I was trying to make some coffee, and long story short, the coffee pot just exploded on me, and coffee all over the place. The guys are pros. They all handled it so well. I was totally embarrassed, beat myself up, and it's kind of cool the way this slips into the conversation through something that Danny calls conscious awareness. So anyway, guys, just a heads up, this is a good one. Let's dive in. Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast, and so good that you could be joining us today because I think you're going to love this conversation. Some of you might remember Danny Wright. Danny is back by popular demand. Actually, it really is true. Danny's episode with us, as we really got into his story and inspiration, the idea of inspiration. It's one of the most popular episodes we've had, and for lots of reasons, including that, we just felt it was good to bring Danny back. And so, Danny, thanks so much for being here again today. Always love chatting with you. I always feel inspired by that. And I know others are going to as well today.
Awesome.
For sure, man. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Tell us a bit about what is living in inspiration. Why don't we start with that? Because that's a big part of what you're doing these days. And there's a whole bunch to it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. So living in inspiration. It's my way. I have a website. Mm-hmm. It's my ministry. I like to think of it as a conversation. I write a blog. It's on there as well. It's a whole bunch of things. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. I would try to sum it up by saying, living in inspiration is trying to allow or to follow spiritual guidance, spiritual direction. Living in the moment and being open to what lays ahead, not mapping it out, not knowing what's coming down the pipe, but being open to receive it. I guess you would even call it trying to live in conscious awareness, just being a little more aware in the present moment, and find you attract a higher level of energy. You see things that you might not have seen, with your head down in a rush to go somewhere. The whole idea of, I'm not in control of everything that lays ahead. But trusting, that the path will be lit up one step at a time.
Yeah. I love that. Really intrigued by the concept of conscious awareness. And I wonder if you could sort of break that down a little bit. Even like, what does that look like in your day-to-day life? I think I have an idea, because sometimes I get these beautiful pictures and texts from you, even early in the morning. I love it, right? Because
I know you're the only guy up at that time, so that's why I send them to you.
That's awesome. But so if you would just tell us a bit about what that means, conscious awareness, and how that plays out in your life, and even how you're blessed and inspired by that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when you think about it, awareness, striving for awareness, but the conscious part, I think, is the key part. Where it came from, I think, for me, was I realized, like, sleepwalked through portions of my life, like autopilot. You're working, raising kids, coaching kids, running around, not slowing down to really. It's almost like, I don't know if you ever saw, there was a Adam Sandler movie, Click. You ever see it?
Yeah, for sure.
And he's like, it felt like that.
One thing to the next, one thing to the next.
Right?
One thing to the next.
Just, everything kind of task-oriented, or just get through this, or, everything's going to be good. We just got to get through this week, and we just got to get to this. And it's kind of like slowing it down and being a little more consciously aware of just how I'm feeling, what's going on, drinking in the moments, trying to live moment to moment. I would say that, to me, and I guess even I could take it a step further, the whole idea of consciousness for me, is just aware that there's a little more than just me, and maybe there's just much greater powers going on behind the scenes than just Danny and his little plans, and being a little more aware of that. So I think there's a whole bunch of other things there, being conscious of other people, even, because, I think it's natural too, when we're younger, we lack some of that awareness, don't you think? All of us, to some degree, you're just so busy thinking about yourself and
Yeah.
what you want to do next and what
Yeah.
your plans are. And
Yeah.
I think that's a natural thing as we get a little older. We start thinking about it a little more, or we're a little more aware. And I'm recognizing how much better I feel, how much less anxiety I have when I'm in that headspace. It's like, it's a solution too. It's a strategy for being a little bit happier, for feeling a little better in my own skin. So it was probably prompted by maybe a little bit of a growing awareness, even some necessity, you know?
Yeah.
And then now it's become an intentional habit of mine, put an effort into it. Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? Like one more level of kind of drilling down on that. How do you try to do that? Because I can't imagine anyone not liking that idea.
Yeah, right.
My life goes too fast. There's so much information coming. I kind of surface through life and through the day. You know, and I know this could be the case for me. Like my day becomes a checklist of just trying to get things done, you know, and as opposed to the vision and inspiration of actually slowing down, enjoying the moment, taking it all in. But how do you intentionally do that?
It's a quite good question, because I mean, I was going to say the first thing that came to my mind is practice, you know, but how do you practice, right? And I think we talked about last time I was here about the morning routines. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Getting right, not necessarily laying out a plan for the day, more asking for inspiration for the day, you know? Saying, I've got a busy day. I've got all these things going on. Help me to stay in the moment. Asking for help, asking for direction. And then I think it's important too, for a long time, I guess the way I practiced it was more of a end of the day, head on the pillow, going through my day. Oh, should have done that, could have done that, you know? I think being intentional about it is striving to be, let's call it a little more introspection or self-reflection throughout the day.
Yeah.
Not just in the morning before you get into the rat race, and not just at the end of the day on reflection, but throughout the day, being a little more intentional, those moments, stopping, slow it down, practice that, being aware. You know, a lot of the times I think it's just after the fact. It's doing something in a rush or brushing somebody off, maybe not being fully present in something, and then recognizing it after and think, But I think that level of awareness, because you get better at it as you practice, it's like catching myself. It's like, okay, I got to make up for that. I got to tell that person, hey, you know what? What were you saying again? I was a bit distracted. You know, that type of thing.
For sure.
So it's like a reset.
Absolutely.
Right? It's constant adjustments. I don't think we ever arrive on that stuff.
Oh, I love it because this is something that I need to work on. I'm trying to work on. I'm good. I got a big time morning routine. Keeps me, you know, just focused and as far as present and aware of the amazing blessings that God's given me over the last 24 hours. And I have something similar at the end of the day, but in between, sometimes it can just be like, you know, and then just as you're talking to Danny, like I'm thinking about something just happened a few minutes ago, because I love you. This is just being aware in the moment of where you might be missing, being present or paying attention to what's going on because of something that has happened. So as you know, I tried to make coffee a few minutes ago, and the thing, like literally, I won't go into all the gory details, but this machine just blew up.
Yeah, it was incredible,
all over the place. And part of me is still thinking, like, how could I be so stupid? How did I screw up? How did I do that? And so this is like a reminder to me, no, man, just let that go.
Relax.
Let it go. Just enter in. Here we go.
Yeah, I love it.
So thanks for the very practical teaching that I could use right now.
And even it's awesome, by the way. If you saw this, you would have to see it to believe it. This disaster with the coffee pot. It was pretty incredible. It just kept coming. We were like, where is it coming from?
Fortunately, the camera wasn't on yet, so it's not recorded.
There was about 3 pots full of water. He put 1 pot in and 3 pots came out.
Exactly.
But I do think when you said there about listening while I was speaking, and I was thinking about that too, is even that listening, being more intentional about listening, you know, we help each other along with that too. Because isn't it funny how, you know, you share a story about, I was rushing through this, or I didn't handle this as well as I should have. And after the fact, so it's not only my own experiences that I'm making note of and making little adjustments on, but having a network of accountability, having a community of people who we share in a real way like this, I think, man, is the best thing in my life. Really, like one of the best things in my life. It's an awesome thing in my life is having people that we kind of provide each other checks and balances. Because if you're spending all your time with some other people who are just fast forward on cruise control through life, you're not maybe getting the reflection you need either. So I think having a few people around you that we can have these types of conversations is kind of a good little reminder. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to try what Jamie said.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to incorporate that into my practice.
Yeah.
I think.
Learning from each other, growing from each other. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I'm wondering about, Danny, is you are in some ways an individual who is very inspired, and you inspire others as part of what you're doing with your writing, with your blogs. We're going to get into one. I can't wait to get into it. But maybe before we do that, just are there times where you don't feel inspired? Because I think so many people could be listening, like, oh, there's this guy. He's full of energy and life, and I wish I could always be inspired like he is. And yeah, exactly. I know that none of us are all the time.
No.
24/7.
Definitely not.
So what's the other side of, I don't know, like not being inspired? What's that look like for you? And what do you do when you're in a place like that?
Yeah, I guess there's a few things, right?
Okay,
but I just like you, I'm listening to you, and then thoughts come into my head. I'm thinking to myself, I wouldn't dare, because I know my wife will watch this, say, I'm always inspired. Your family gets to see the other side of you, where you're drained. And but I think because we talked about last time as well, about tasting different sides of life and having more of an appreciation for other things, recognizing that I am somebody who's also susceptible to low feelings, to depression, to some real get stuck. I've been stuck. I've been where, I can't find any inspiration. And now it's like when that kind of happens and it starts to turn into a self-pity, it's just a dark place, a place I don't want to go. I've lost my focus. I've forgotten. And it's easy. Somebody could say to you, you just got to be grateful, or, oh, you're a lucky guy. And they start naming all the things that you should be grateful for. Well, that just makes me feel worse. It's like, oh, so I'm feeling this way, and I'm also ungrateful. Big picture, I'm grateful. Big picture, I have faith. I believe in God. I believe in love. I try to live in inspiration. But moment to moment, there's challenges along the way. And so I can pray, I can meditate. A big thing for me is getting out of myself. So being useful to others in some way, right?
Huge.
Being of service, being helpful, being considerate or thoughtful of others. What can I contribute rather than what am I getting, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that piece, the key ingredient, was what we were talking about a few minutes ago there, about the self-reflection, that being aware. Because at least if I'm aware of it, but if I'm going through life trying to pretend, putting on a mask, you can only whistle in the dark so long, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And you're at some point along the way, you may even fool everybody around you.
Yeah.
And that was one of my big realizations. I realized at my darkest time, Jamie, I've told you last time about the, standing at the end of the pier kind of moment. What I realized is nobody would have known. I'm telling them a joke, singing a song before I left. That's my personality. That's my mask,
Yeah.
So I think a big thing that helps me these days is recognizing, am I feeling it?
Yeah.
Am I really trying to live in inspiration right now? Or am I putting on a mask for everybody else? Just that little bit of honesty.
Yeah.
And then I think praying about it and meditating and doing my work. But if I skip that part, then I think I told you earlier, my buddy who says, we can become blind to our blindness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered the question.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, I feel like what you've just named is part of what does allow you to be so inspiring to others, because you're honest about how you're doing. And often the articles that you've shared with me and that I've checked out that you've done, often it comes out of that. Like it starts with where the doubts or hurts or pain is, and then goes to a place of inspiration, which I think is really being real. Is actually really inspiring, because people can relate to that, because you're naming not only your reality, but you're naming theirs, as well.
Right on.
Yeah.
It's like we're connecting on a different level.
Yeah.
Almost
for sure.
like an unspoken language where you see that in each other, right?
Yeah.
Or feel that in each other too.
But in your honesty and naming sometimes when you're not inspired or where things are in that deep, dark place, you're naming, I think, other people's reality as well in a way that they connect with it, for sure.
I would hope so.
Yeah, which you did recently, and I want to chat about this blog that you put out recently, Doubt in Faith, and just really being honest about the fact that sometimes, often, probably for most people, in coming to faith, and it's a continuous process, there's doubts and struggles along the way. And yeah, I just thought it was a great article. Thanks for putting it out there. And a couple of things I really would love to dive into right now. You mentioned about people being hurt and wounded by their experience with church, maybe organized religion, or even other people who call themselves Christians. Yeah, just how that has been partly where people's doubts have come from. Yeah, talk about that. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's been, I guess, because of my own story, my own past. Maybe that's why I seem to attract a lot of those types of conversations or encounters. And what I've noticed is, it's like I dipped my toe in the water there, or I had an experience as a kid in church, or somebody I really looked up to, that was my version, or that was my interpretation of, say, God or religion, and they hurt you, or they disappointed you, or all those different. We've all got our own paths that we kind of get our spiritual development, our spiritual growth, that path we go. I think I'm fortunate that I had sort of a religious upbringing that I turned away from, I rebelled against, kind of thing. And then I kind of found my way back, which was cool, because I guess what I believe I'm blessed is because I was able to rediscover a faith of mine, not a theory, not a concept, not someone else's belief, because in those tough times, you better have something you believe. You better have a faith that works for you, because, well, put it this way, in those moments of real troubled times, I can't rely on Jamie's, somebody else's, well, he says, I've just got to believe. But if those doubts are gnawing away inside of me, I just think I'm doing myself a disservice to stuff them down. And just, I've got faith. It's back to that pretending thing, putting on a mask almost. Maybe worrying more about the fellowship and community and fitting in a community, and not wanting these people to see, Danny's God-centered and he really believes and blah, blah, blah. If I am not real about those moments of doubt, and not even just, I remember back once I had doubt before I found faith. That's not how it is for me either. No. It's intertwined. Doubt is a part of the faith process, I guess, for me. So it's almost like a question and answer thing, or this awareness. This awareness creeps up that, like, okay, let me try a different way. When I think about, you ever get that? Two thoughts come into your head at the same time on live podcast? It's awesome. All right. Let's talk about that
Which
coffee
one do
you
I
spilled.
Share?
Big picture, I believe in God. I don't have a doubt that there's God. There's a power greater than me, and I believe in this power of love. And I believe, if you ask me, do you have faith? Yes, I do. But moment to moment, my actions often contradict my beliefs, because I got both hands on the wheel. It's like, oh no, I have faith, but I'm going to drive this one, if I'm trying to manage the outcome, if I'm trying to control all the elements going on around it, well, then I'm lacking faith to some degree. If I'm worrying about it, I know Thomas Merton said, that anxiety is a lack of faith. And I know it's not that simple and black and white, but to some degree, when I'm struggling, tied up with the anxiety, the worry of how this is going to play out, that type of anxiety and worry, in that moment, I'm lacking faith. I can be the most faithful guy in the world, but in that moment, I'm clearly struggling to turn this over to God. God, I trust you have it. So, but here's the thing. I think sometimes we're afraid to admit that or talk about that, because we think somehow it's a reflection that I lack faith, And sometimes I think the messaging can be, I don't know if you say negative, but the messaging can be not helpful when someone says, well, you just need to have faith. You just need to believe. Like, I know. I've experienced it a bunch of times. And if I look in the rearview mirror, there's a bunch of times where faith carried me through. But right here in this moment, I think we got to cross that bridge to faith. I think there's no shortcut. So it's like I'm in doubt, or I've got fears. I want to get to faith, but I can't fake it. I've got to walk through it. And I think that's that inward journey where where we find a faith that works for us,
Yeah.
that we can rely on.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's almost a trust in entering into that space and even allowing people to enter into that space. They not feel like you have to have the right answers or fix it up for them, just letting people talk and express their doubts. And it's been amazing to me over time how often just giving people the space, the permission, the love to create that space and not judge, not say this is what you should believe, just to really, really allow for that to happen. It's amazing. It's almost like a trust in God to let that happen.
Yeah.
And how people often come to the other side of that with a different kind of something happens. They're changed in the process.
And don't you? I like how you just said permission, almost, because I do think that it's not necessarily a granting permission, but it's by being real, like you said earlier, or sharing our wounds.
Mhm.
It's kind of like saying, hey, Jamie's a believer, or Jamie's faith carries him through some of these things. But man, he's told me he has doubts.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
That just it's like, so that's okay.
Yeah.
We're human.
Yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
here having a human experience, and I'm not always going to get it right. And I love, the whole idea of, that we think of almost spiritual growth being an ascension, and it's been anything but for me. Yeah, we definitely, I grow, and I can look back and say, yeah, I've come a long way from the young guy who was cocky, trying to manage life, but at the same time, I know any given morning I can wake up and, the cage rattlers woke up before me, and I've got some doubts and fears, or I've got some other things going on, and it's like, here's another opportunity to practice this, right? Being aware of it.
Yeah, for sure. And when we think about humility is coming to mind. Like just
For sure.
having the humility to kind of like, hey, I don't have all the answers. No one really does. We're talking about a pretty big concept in God.
Yeah.
We're talking about faith.
Yeah.
And I think there's just something God works within that humility, which kind of makes sense. And Christian faith would be that God came in Jesus, took on human flesh. And that's a pretty humbling thing to do, right? So you think about like God has modeled humility for us. And somehow when we like really do practice that, live into that, which is actually quite freeing, I think, like you said, like if you're living through life, it's like, hey, I got to have all the answers to every question somebody has. Like that's a lot of pressure and pretty much impossible to have this literally freedom and trust that we'll figure it out together. There's some things we may never figure out. It doesn't mean we can't move forward together and walk together and have faith together and love together. And yeah.
I like what you said too, and even on humility. Humility is our guide. That article I wrote where I quoted Matthew 18, where Jesus said to be childlike. I think that's what that's saying is to be. That's humility, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be to recognize I don't have all the answers. And I mean, what a better, you said about a guide. What better guide than Jesus? And who also had doubts, had moments of doubt, despite, and there's a whole faith built around him, and yet he had moments of doubt, is that not a blueprint right there for, the walk of faith?
Yeah.
So I think it's funny, people say, it's like, again, that big picture or, macro, micro, whatever you want to call it, I think that I've heard people say love and fear or faith and fear can't coexist. I guess black and white, yes, that's correct to some degree. If in this very moment I'm 100% confident in something, then I guess in that moment maybe that's true. But I don't think that's what life is. I think it's always, they coexist. Absolutely. They are intertwined, and it's this walk of the human side being fearful, filled with doubt, and it's like, practice love, be open to love.
For sure.
Don't you think, James?
Absolutely.
It is. It's a walk. And I think the day that we do arrive and say, okay, I've got this, we'll probably be sitting at the gates.
Because it's not human.
Well,
No, anybody.
Right?
Absolutely. So really love and appreciate. Thanks for that just naming that so clearly and today, but also in your blog, that really, without having doubt, it's almost impossible to have faith because we all have doubts. What are some of those doubts when you think about your own experience, when you think about people who you talk to these days? What are, nice to get a little practical on that one, like what are some of the doubts that are real that people need to name and work through and I
mean, I guess there's a million different doubts. Like, is it doubts that that the outcome is gonna work out the way I hope it does. Because I find our doubts are like our yeah buts, I trust that God is going to, I've had some experiences with my kids. It was a tough one because it's even closer to home. There's, say, financial insecurity might be one that would be a doubt that you might live with and struggle with. And, what if I lose my job? What if this, it's all the what ifs, and then we can pray about that and trust God's going to provide, But then there's like another layer. It's, your kids climbing a mountain, or they're off living their life. And you have, when they're younger, you take care of them. And if they're going to fall, you catch them. And now they're 3,000 miles away. Yeah. But I trust that God's got this. I don't know what God's plan is. They have their own walk, their own faith journey, their own contract with God. So really, I kind of have and that is an almost terrifying thing. So I find those types of doubts creep in, but it's also a recognition that I have no control, and I don't think I can ever fully resolve that because I don't know all the answers. I don't know. Yeah. There's other people. It's one thing, don't you think, Jamie, within yourself, those doubts that creep up within ourselves, like I say, maybe the worry, what if interest rates go up? And what if this, and what if that? Well, if I'm saying I have faith, then I should have faith it'll work out. But I also have to take steps along the way.
Yeah.
I still got to show up. I still got to put the work. I still got to get out and put my work boots on.
Someone sent me something recently. I loved it. It was that God can move mountains, but sometimes we have to pick up a shovel.
Right?
That was, and I think that is the gospel, really. It really is the good news, that God can do amazing things, but God involves us, energizes us, inspires us, resources us, strengthens us to be able to do those things and be a part of them. Yeah.
For sure. And it's an interesting question though when we try to actually name a couple or give some examples, because I feel like there's not much that goes on that there's not a little bit of doubt or fear. Like even you wouldn't even realize just on the most basic level. You get in your car, approaching a light. Do I stop at this light or do I go? Am I going to be on time for work? Fear's always in there. Things that we don't even consider fear. Don't you think?
Yeah, for sure.
I might be 2 minutes late. That person might get ahead of me. That person in the buffet line might get a bigger piece of pie than me. Fears are always there.
That's great. No, and there's something about talking about your fears. Somehow they just don't seem as big as they did when they're unnamed. When you talk about your doubts, it's somehow you find a way. God kind of helps you work through things. I think when you're able to name them, articulate them, again, have that space to, like, so often I'll be talking with my wife Katrina, and I'll be going like, I don't know what to do with this. And as I'm talking, like, oh, I should do this. And I go, hey man, thanks so much for helping me. And she'll look at me like, no problem. But there was just creating that space in a loving atmosphere where I know I'm so loved. I can say whatever and work it out and wrestle with it. And often when you have that space, it's amazing what God can do to bring you to another place.
Don't you think right there, is that not sort of a conscious awareness? You're making it conscious because when those conversations are between your ears, like we talked about before, there's disconnects. So even if the person across from you doesn't give you those answers, you're hearing it out loud. You're breathing life into it, making it real, don't you think? And it's like, oh, maybe that's not quite as bad. What is it? A problem shared is a problem halved. Probably the same with a fear too.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
I was going to say, in that article, I spoke about a song, "Picture of Jesus." Ben Harper did an album with the Blind Boys of Alabama. Whole album, awesome. But anybody who's into music and looking for, it's funny, I was thinking about this with inspiration. It's like we think, oh, this artist is inspirational. I think it brings back to that too. If you're living in inspiration and open to receive it, you're going to hear what you need to hear in all different. So not all music appeals to everybody, let's say, right? But this particular song, the reason why I wrote about it and kind of it inspired, that's what it motivated and inspired that most recent article, Jamie, because I love the idea. He sings about a few different pictures of Jesus, and I think about that. That I think ties all this together for me about the doubt and faith.
Cool.
My faith, my picture of Jesus has to be my picture. It can't be yours. It can't be somebody else's. If I'm the Jesus that I follow, I put it to the love test, when someone's presuming to speak for Jesus, you know, I got to put that through my own internal filter. Does it feel right? You know, and I think that's an important thing for me. So that I guess when we talk about specific doubts is one thing, but applying that test, you know, if that makes sense, to those doubts, I think I'm going to be a lot more content with the answers I find if I make them my own, and if it's true to me, and if it's at a heart level and not such an academic exercise or an intellectual, you know, this is what it says in the book. Rather, hey, I've read this, I've watched this guy, I've listened to this. This is my picture, you know, this is my idea of what love is. And that's what is going to be my guide. So if Jesus was love in the flesh, you know, then my guide would be love. Then I got a lot better chance of staying, you know, on that path than straying too far. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. That's one of the things I love about the way you put these articles together, the way you offer inspiration, Danny, is you're so honest and genuine about your own experience, but you leave room for everyone else, that your experience doesn't have to be theirs. And I just think there's something humble and beautiful and gracious and really, really very faithful in that.
Wow.
So thanks, man.
Thank you so much, Jamie.
Thanks for being a guy that continues to bring inspiration to this world, brother. Yeah,
you know what?
Appreciate you.
I thank you so much, Jamie. But just on what you just said there, I know I don't like, I guess again, from my own experience, I don't want someone to wrap it all up with a bow, what faith is. Maybe their faith, share their experience with me, but don't tell me kind of thing. I don't want it spoon fed to me. Give me sort of some of that, and then let me take it from there and practice it. Try it. Like you said, make mistakes even. I probably should have listened to him. Right?
Yep,
don't you think? And make it our own. Because I think that's the only thing that really, in the end of the day, if we want, there's faith, and then there's a faith that works for us. So it's like there's a belief, but until we challenge it, until we really put it to the test for ourselves, it's not really faith yet, is it? It's kind of, it's hope, or it's a theory or a good idea. But hey, that looks good. Until I actually apply it and try it myself. Would you agree with that,
Absolutely.
Jay?
Love it. Hey, let's close with this. We talked about books that we've been reading. And so what's the best book that you've read recently?
Recently? Richard Rohr has a book called Jesus' Alternative Plan, Sermon on the Mount. And it's just another look from a different perspective again, kind of a real stripped down and raw version again, look at the Sermon on the Mount, which is packed with so much of our faith, you know?
Sure.
Cool. And I love Richard Rohr. He's from the same kind of ilk as like a Brian McLaren, that sort of school of, Christian mystic. And I love it. I love that stuff.
And certainly challenge some of the orthodox thought or status quo. Yeah, absolutely. But in a very faithful way, right?
100%.
Yeah, no, love it. Highly, absolutely. Okay, this might be harder to name down to one, so maybe give you a couple or two or three here. Best book you've ever read?
Ever? In this type of book, my favorite is Wayne Dyer. He's got a few. Actually had a book called Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, The Power of Intention. It's really, so if I had to narrow it down, because I mean, on the subject, Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis is brilliant. There's certain books from way back that are like, they just stand the test of time, you know? The first one let's call it the self-empowerment kind of era, self-help, all that. Remember, it used to just be a little section in the bookstore. Anthony Robbins, I remember, sitting up late at night, feeling sorry for myself, watching infomercials, and Anthony Robbins came on, and it was, Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within. And I'm like, calling, send me the tapes and the book. And I wanted some of that. He had this just energy and passion. And so anyway, that book, it's over 500 pages. Well, after you did your podcast recently on your best books, I was interested. I was looking at a few of my own books.
Cool.
And because Stephen Covey was one, I think anybody who's walked down this path has probably looked at, and it's very, I guess you would say maybe practical, And then looking at the inside cover, that's what I was going to say, of Awaken the Giant Within, one of the, they get a bunch of recommendations. Stephen Covey says, you were one of the greatest influencers of your generation. And I thought, that's over 30 years ago. Everybody thinks that's a new term, being an influencer,
Yeah.
That was the OG influencer, or I guess one of the OGs from that era anyway. But yeah, so Awaken the Giant Within kind of opened my eyes to a bunch of different books like that. And I Good to Great. There was a whole bunch of those type that combined spiritual principles with leadership. But ultimately, at the end of the day, my go-tos, Wayne Dyer, I just love the way he really kind of strips it down. I can flip it open at any page. That's another thing too. I don't have to read it from cover to cover. I can flip it open at any page and find a little bit of inspiration. So yeah, Wayne Dyer, he's my man for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But I just love books in general.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Those types of books?
Yeah, absolutely.
And mine are all highlighted and dog-eared and written in, and I think you're the same, aren't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love borrowing books or sharing books with others, because then I love looking sometimes I'll read what they've underlined but then I also love just seeing what they've written in and what's inspired or connected with them too. It's cool.
And I love those types of books that you can revisit too.
Yeah.
And you see something new.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you think?
Oh, for sure.
Right?
For sure. Yeah. I know a guy a few years ago, he said he was just going to read the same 10 books over and over again because they had so much gold in them that it would take him a lifetime to actually practice.
It's so true.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyway, that's awesome. Brother, thanks so much, Danny,
Thanks for
being
having me
part of
again,
the
man.
podcast today.
That was great to see
Hope
you.
we can do it again. I'd love to have you back, and love to pray for you before we go. Yeah,
thank you.
For sure. Cool. Oh God, thank you for the gift of inspiration. It is your spirit that inspires us, that fills us, that gives us creativity, that takes a song that we've heard and turns it into a blog post that helps many people in their life, in a life with you. So that's just the way you work, and we thank you and praise you for your goodness and your faithfulness that you continue to work through everyday people like us. So bless Danny. We may he continue to be encouraged by the work that you've called him to do, the ministry that he is offering to so many, and on those darkened days that you would be that light, that inspiration for him. Thank you for his authenticity and for the beautiful way that you continue to work both through him, but also in him. Bless him and his family. And we pray for everyone who will listen and watch this, that they, in their own way, in where they are, that they also will be inspired and encouraged by what we've shared today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, my man. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Awesome.
And thank you, friends, for being a part of the conversation today. Always good to have you, part of the Good News Podcast family. God bless you and be with you. See you again soon. Well, again, I love chatting with Danny. Hope you enjoyed listening to what Danny had to offer us again today in the Good News Podcast. This inspired musings really encourage you to go to Danny's website, Living in Inspiration. And he does these very beautiful writings around just real stuff. And that's as we talked in this conversation, that's one of Danny's greatest gifts to the world. Like he's so real, he's authentic. And I think that's partly what's inspiring, is because we can relate to what Danny is talking about. I really love that we had a chance to talk about one of his latest writings called Doubt in Faith. That was the topic. And isn't it true that we all have doubts? And in fact, Dan and I talked a little bit after the conversation. We realized we didn't really get to naming specific and concrete doubts in this conversation. Just the idea that it's important to have space, to be safe, to be able to name our doubts in the midst of having faith. And sometimes our faith grows as we do that. And so maybe a challenge for each of us would be to take this away. What are your doubts? Because I love Danny makes you think, and perhaps leaving it like this maybe is the best place for us to leave it, because what are the doubts that you have? Maybe that you have been afraid to name to yourself or even to others, and just to not be afraid to go there, to be able to be real about our doubts and our questions, and know that we can come out the other side. In fact, sometimes just by naming them, we'll come out the other side stronger. That's my hope and prayer for you. I know for us, we really strive at NBUC, North Braylon United Church, to be a church where we say people can belong, not only before they believe, but people can belong even if they don't believe, to come along for the ride, to be curious, to get a sense of who God is, and just see where that might go. So hope that you can experience that in your life, in your faith as well. Friends, it is so beautiful. I'm so grateful for you and to be able to share this thing called life together. God bless you and be with you. Again, check out Danny Wright, livingininspiration.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Good News with Jamie Holtom, and love to have you a part of the Good News Podcast family. God bless and be with you. Hope to see you again real soon.